Okay, I have one item just so that we can do a check on the retreat, have a little conversation on that. So I'm going to put item number 5 for the board retreat on Saturday, January 9th. Anybody else, any board members have any other changes or additions to the agenda? Hi, Frank. Kurt, did you have one?
No,
Bruce. No, I don't.
Okay.
This is Bruce. This is Bruce.
Hi, Bruce.
I don't know if we need an update on the banking situation, but
sure, let's put that on.
Take like a 1-minute update.
Yep, fine, let's put it on, thank you. Okay, I would then entertain a motion to approve the amended agenda.
So moved.
By Kurt.
Conference will now be recorded.
All right, Maggie, is that on your side, Maggie?
I can't hear anything.
Okay, we still have an echo. If somebody got both a computer audio and their phone on, been solved. Right, awesome. I'm going to do a roll call vote then on the approval of the agenda. So, Bruce, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Steve, how do you vote?
Aye.
Kurt, how do you vote?
Aye.
Frank, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Mike votes aye too. That passes 5-0. Okay, so we're on to the other old new business, and the first one is our Sutton Lake Outlet Project with the selection of a contractor. So go ahead and take it away.
All right, so this project has been on our to-do list for quite some time. Back in October 2019, we first approved this to solicit for bids, but that was contingent upon us getting the easements from the landowners and from getting approval for the operating plan from the Minnesota DNR. And so now that we've gotten both of those items, it's going out for bid. And for those of those who aren't familiar with this project, it is altering or doing a retrofit on the outlet to Sutton Lake to provide some upstream storage and prevent some of the flooding on Prior Lake. And just for frame of reference too, we have funding for it for this 2021 year. $207,000 of that is coming from a flood hazard mitigation grant, and the rest of it is from our reserve and a small portion from the 2021 levy. Of that remaining funds, $389,000 is there to cover the construction costs. And with that, I'm going to let Kyle from EOR take the wheel and talk about how the bidding went. And Kyle, I'm going to make you presenter here.
All right, good evening. I'm Kyle Crawford, Water Resource Engineer with EOR, and I'm the project engineer for the Sutton Lake project. Give me 1 minute here, let me pull it up. All right, can everyone see the recommendation for award PDF in front of them?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So we posted the project in early December, both on Quest CDN, which is an online bidding platform, and within local newspapers in Prior Lake area. Bids were then due on Tuesday, that'd be yesterday morning at 10 a.m. Due to COVID, we ended up holding a formal bid opening an hour later via Zoom, and contractors were provided that Zoom link so they were able to call in. So with that, we had 10 total bids come in, and all 10 were responsive. After reviewing them yesterday afternoon, we did verify that Vite and Company was our overall low bidder for this project at about $274,000. We have worked with Vite in the past, including a similar watershed project over in the East Metro just a few months ago that they did successfully for us. As you can see, of the bids, a majority of them actually did come in under our engineer's estimate. Talking to contractors, it sounds like there's not a lot of projects going on this winter, so contractors are hungry for work, and fortunately that did work out in our favor for budget reasons on this project. So I can open it up if there's any questions for me, either on the recommendation for award or the plans.
Thanks, Kyle. Gents, anybody have any questions for Kyle?
I have one question.
Go for it.
I don't know how we award bids, but typically when I would do a contract with the city, we also would authorize like a 5% contingency for quantity overruns or minor change orders. Otherwise,
Yep, so
if they go over a little bit on the contract award, they have to come back to us. Oh, you are recommending, there it is. I didn't see that.
yep,
That came
actually
out-
that's a good point. I didn't scroll down all the way to the bottom of my memo there. So with that, we are recommending that the board authorize the administrator to execute change orders in an amount not to exceed 5% of the total contract. And that will just be to prevent any potential delays. So we wouldn't have to wait for or set up a board meeting in order to approve that. Anything larger than 5%, we would be going back to the board for approval.
Thanks, Kyle. Anybody else? Oh, go ahead.
Kurt
Bruce,
has
you
a
have-
question.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Kyle, did Vite give you any kind of a timeline as to when they could get started and the length of time it might take to complete the project? Did they give you any sort of ballpark figures?
Not specifically, it is obviously the end of December, so we have a fairly short timeline. The way we've laid out it, the expectation is that the month of January will likely be spent on contractor agreements and insurance and bonding and reviewing project submittals on my end. So the expectation would be they likely would not start any earlier than February 1.
With like a couple week period needed to complete the project? Is that what you're figuring?
Yeah, I would assume they would probably do some clearing and try to drive some. Hopefully, we have a good solid cold winter, but they'd probably spend about a week of prep work, and then I would say probably 2 to 3 weeks of actually mass grading and installing all the pipe work and infrastructure out there.
Just one more quick follow-up. Carl, you mentioned this too. Is there a downside to doing this during the winter? I mean, most of the ground is going to come up in chunks, which I would think would not be favorable towards making a nice smooth berm. Would it?
Yep. So with that, we did do some geotechnical borings and got some recommendations from a geotechnical subconsultant on exactly that, among other things. And with that, we are proposing a large subcut of material and importing new material for a majority of that berm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Frank, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I may be thinking about the wrong project, but wasn't there a liquidated damages clause in here and an assumption of certain progress being made? Maybe I've got something twisted around in my head, but I thought there was, which would address Kurt's question.
Yeah, so as part of the larger bid documents, there are liquidated damages included. I don't recall the exact value, but it is a per day charge if the contractor were to extend the project beyond our substantial completion date.
So that provides a motivation.
Exactly.
Correct, and this is Carl, I can chime in here real quick. The substantial completion date listed in the contract, because we don't want them working close to when we could have really high flows or spring melt, is March 31st. Ready for final payment by May 31st. And the liquidated damages a delay that would be 500 per day beyond that.
And I can note as well on those completion dates, there will be a performance bond required as well, so that the project will be covered essentially for all of 2021 as well, if there were to be any errors or anything that might need to be repaired following completion of the project.
Frank, something else?
Yeah, sorry. Is it an LOC or performance bond?
It is a performance bond.
Yeah. Okay.
What are you thinking, Frank?
Well, an LOC is cash, basically. You can get it converted. Now, I don't know what the cost is comparatively. Kyle, you'd have a much better handle on that. Why did you choose, I'm just curious, performance bond over an LOC? Because I'm in deeper water than I can swim in.
Well, and admittedly on the legal spectrum, that's probably a little bit of deep water for me as well. Chuck might be able to weigh in, but that is something in the past our legal counsel has recommended we pursue a performance bond in lieu of other options.
I just remember they're hard to call on. I do remember that because I tried to call them eons ago.
For the most part, for watershed districts and all the contracts with other entities, other watershed districts, this is kind of standard operating procedure to require performance bonds. The letter of credits will basically just translate to another 2 to 3% or more that gets passed along to the owner of the project in having the contractor have to require that. So it's kind of a risk reward, try to keep your costs low. Yes, it might be a little harder to draw on a performance bond, but they are legally binding. So that's generally the guidance, as my understanding from having discussions with Watershed Council in the past.
Mr. Chair, are you looking for a motion?
Just to confirm, there aren't any further questions. Steve?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Did you have any questions, Steve? I didn't hear you ask, but I just want to do a confirmation before Frank.
Can you hear me, Mike?
I can. Yes.
No further questions.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, Frank, I didn't have any questions, so I'm ready for a motion.
Okay, I just want to make one more comment.
Yes, Bruce?
Yeah, no, I've worked with Vite. It is standard operating procedure to go with bonds. And Vite is, my experience, is a very reputable contractor. They will do a good job. And if Frank's ready to make a motion, go for it, because I'm ready.
With that, I'd like to move the motion. And Bruce, you just heard him. He said he would personally guarantee this.
Yes.
Second.
So a motion is second, and I'm assuming that's to follow the recommendation by staff to add the additional 5% contingency. Yes. Is that correct then, Frank?
That is correct, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry.
Nope, that's okay. I'm just doing a point of clarification to get that on the record. It's awesome. We have a motion on the floor. Any further conversation? Hearing none, I'm going to go for, again, a roll call vote. Kurt, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Steve, how do you vote?
Aye.
Bruce, how do you vote?
I don't know if I'm personally liable. I have to think about this. Aye.
Frank, how do you vote?
Aye.
And I'm going to do a double aye, knowing that Bruce is personally liable. So we have a 6-0 pass. Just kidding, 5-0. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Kyle. Okay, next item on our agenda is the 2021 Accounting Services, 2022 Accounting Services Contract. Maggie, you're on mute, Maggie.
Yeah, turn your mute off. There you go.
Thanks, Mike. So the contract draft that was provided in the board packet is just our standard contract language. But what's really different about this one is the end and Exhibit A, which is the scope of services. So I was just going to kind of walk through these and the ultimate payments. In their original proposal, they had a $27,000 quote listed, not to exceed. But since that time, we've had discussions with them about the Prior Lake outlet channel and managing that, as well as all the other extra items that we have on our to-do list. So they have increased their services on their monthly services to, I'm not going to go to the end here, to basically $34,000 a year. And so the frame of reference on this is that Chris Shadow usually charges us roughly about $32,000. This year in particular, because of FEMA, has been an extraordinary year and has gone beyond that, but typically it's like $32,000. So this is right in line with that amount. And it also includes the additional services for payroll. But this year is going to be $37,000 because they've asked for an additional $3,000 for those transitioning costs and for the onboarding. There's a lot to learn here at the Watershed District, and so it's going to take them a little bit of time and money to do that. And so we tried to get a little bit more detailed in this contract than we were with Chris Shadow, making sure that everything is covered, because this is going to be our Bible when it comes to monthly billing. All of this in task one is included in this $27,000 not to exceed total for the year, which includes auditing, all the monthly services. I'm not going to go through these one by one, but we've listed them out in detail. And then this controller here that says TBD has been identified as Troy Gabler. So that will be filled in but prior to the contract being signed. And then we also separated out the Prior Lake outlet channel services, which is an additional additional 7,000. So those two together are 34 grand a year. And then this is just the transitioning onboarding. But with that, what we're looking for is approval for the district to move forward with this contract. Do you guys have any questions about the contract itself or about the services as described?
Yeah, Maggie, let me kick this one off. I was aware, recall even during the interview, that the outlet channel was sort of a gap in their proposal, but it was probably obvious that there would be a transition and an onboarding. So can you help me understand why we should be signing up for this additional $3K?
It's above the traditional monthly services. So when they quoted us that amount, that did not include the onboarding. Typically, folks don't do that for free. So rather than having them charge us above and beyond costs, I had them parcel that out.
Was it, maybe I just do a clarification. So was this in their proposal that we would be charged then for transitioning and onboarding over and above the 27K quote?
It wasn't in their proposal, but that's additional cost to them.
Yes, I understand there's work involved. I'll put it that way. I believe there's work involved, but it was just, this appears to be, anyway, that's all I'm highlighting. That's it. Anybody else? Frank?
So just a couple of questions. There's a number of things in here that talk about, for example, the third item down, assist with questions from district as needed. Who makes that decision? Who says it's as needed? Because you got a blend here of a cost not to exceed, right? That's why we just talked about that, plus costs. And I'm wondering which is paramount. Is it the cost not to exceed? Is there one day you say, hey, I want this piece of information? They say, sorry, you're at 37 or whatever the number is. You know how that works?
Yeah, so I asked them the same question. So these are just the estimated hours per month. If they end up going over this just by answering our questions, then it's on them. They can't exceed the annual cost. So we'll cap them at that point.
Then one other question, they refer to management. There is somewhere in here, it just popped out at me, as requested by management. Who is that? I mean, it could be argued it's the district administrator or it's the board. I'm sorry, I know I saw it when I...
It's important to get contracts right, and that's a good catch. I can make sure we have both managers and staff in there rather than just management.
I don't know if that's the right answer. It's such a vague,
Yeah,
who gets to ask for these things? I presume we'd want it as broad as possible, but I guess I can think about an argument against that point of view too.
Thank you. Steve, Bruce, Kurt, anybody else?
Well,
yeah, this is Steve.
Steve's up. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, sorry, what is the duration of this contract?
it is a 2021 to 2022 contract, so it's a 2-year.
Okay. I think they're a very capable, talented firm. I don't think they want to go too far out, give us a rate schedule. So just be prepared for them possibly saying in year 2 and 3, oh, this is more work than we expected, and might have to push back on that. So, but you know, they certainly are a good firm. That's all I have.
Steve, I'm going to do a clarification just so you're aware. We have a process where we take this contract out to bid on a regular cycle. So this will go back out for bid at that time. So it's our mechanism to ensure that we get competitive bids and things don't get out of control. So.
Sounds good.
Okay. Kurt, did you have anything, or Bruce?
I was just going to say regarding Frank's comment, we've come across this issue before, Frank. You know, what is management? Is it just the district administrator? Is it just the board of managers? Is it both? This is not a new thing put out there, and I totally agree. It should be clarified.
Bruce?
No, I don't have any problem. I guess I just checked their proposal and didn't say anything about transition fees in there.
Yeah, I don't recall any.
No.
So
No, it didn't.
On the point that Frank brought up and Kurt just talked about, Maggie, I think it would be I would be shocked if they didn't think that they would end up hearing from the board. So I might even just ask you just do a confirmation to make sure that the board is included in that list, not doing a clarification, but just language, because I would be surprised if they that was outside of the bounds. But it's a good catch, and I think it's good to clarify. And so if that's it, then any further conversation then on this transition thing from anybody? Seeing none, is somebody willing to make a motion? Bruce, our treasurer?
Well, I'll make a motion to execute the contract between CLA and the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further conversation? Seeing none.
Mike, if I can ask one quick question, as far as so this is going to cover all of payroll. So what does our office people have to do? They simply have to get the work hours emailed over to Sterling, and they're going to run with the ball after that.
Well, we set up a CLA with our harvest payroll or timesheet account, so they can access that directly and get the information that they need. And Amy's been working with them on how the processing goes with that. So yeah, they'll be doing a bulk of that. I believe we'll still have QuickBooks in-house for easy accounting purposes. But yeah, they're going to be taking all of that over.
So you'll still need one person in the office, whoever it is, to at least get the hours together, totaled, and get them sent out, correct? Is that it?
No.
Well, they should be able to access those directly. So in theory, we won't need somebody here to do that. They'll just be able to go in online and get that themselves. And they'll be doing all the 1099s and W-2s as well.
That's
okay,
all on,
thank you.
Yeah, that's just all in the cloud. So it's accessible by the vendors.
All right.
Both accounting stuff, ADP stuff, all that. It's all accessible these days. Okay. No other further conversation, then we're going to do a roll call vote. Steve Pawnee, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Kurt, how do you vote?
Aye.
Bruce, how do you vote?
Aye.
Frank?
Aye.
And Mike votes aye as well. Thanks, everybody. Moving right along, we are now on to item number 3, our draft watershed blueprint report.
I think we skipped. Oh no, we never mind.
Nope.
Sorry. We're
Yep.
all right. All right. So in the memo that was with this Upper Watershed Blueprint report, part of it was talking about goals, and there are some questions through email that kind of came up that might want to just be clarified. So when we're looking at this report, we're going to have to make sure that it meets our original goals for the project. And so I'm just going to go through these one by one. And Mike, I don't know if you want to have a discussion after that about the goals and if we need to modify those or if there's discussion around what they were. The first one was to recommend and prioritize programs, projects, and policy to reduce phosphorus and runoff volume. Our second goal for this blueprint project was to identify partners and potential funding sources. And the last goal was to detail a 10-year schedule for prioritized program and project implementation, including short-term and long-term maintenance considerations. And so I believe, Mike, you just wanted to check in to make sure that these goals are still correct and are what everybody wants to see with this blueprint report before we go through it.
Yep. Thanks, Maggie. And just for transparency, I was the one that brought this issue up. When I read the report, I thought it did cover the aspects of the phosphorus, the two goals that we really had for this. There was the list of the projects, the potential, and all the kind of expected work that I would have expected Wank to do was in there. But what was missing to me was the storage. So it's the other half of what our request was of them, and that's not in here. And to me, that's a significant gap in what I believe was the expectation and what we set out to ask to do for us. So that's why I asked Maggie to share that. I wanted to have a conversation. I believe there's a major chunk missing.
Thank you, Mike. I'm sorry.
Sorry, what's that? Who's that?
I said thank you for that feedback. And I do have a PowerPoint presentation I put together where I do talk some about the volume controls and what we found in our report. And maybe the report itself doesn't bring that to task as much as it should. So I think maybe if we go through this and talk about that a little bit, you'll get a little more clarity on part of why that volume piece is missing or not as thoroughly fleshed out as you might have been expecting.
So it's missing, Brian. I'll even, I'm sorry, I'm not want to mince words, but
yep.
Without getting the presentation, are you telling me that I know this is at a 60%? Are you telling me you're still going to provide that analysis and the identification of the potential projects?
Well, what we really found in looking at different modeling scenarios and everything on this, Mike, is that in order to really achieve any kind of flood control, flood management for Upper Pryor, Lower Pryor, Spring Lake with storage in the upper watershed is going to take something on an extremely massive scale of storage. For example, even projects where we're looking at storing 200 acre feet upstream, it's really having minimal impact on any of the flooding conditions on the downstream lakes. And that's largely because this model is driven by volume rather than by flow rate. And so it's really having, as far as to really have a meaningful impact on the downstream lakes, I mean, I'll use the 2016 flood study as an example. And that one, in creating looking at implementing every single storage aspect that they looked at in that report, you're only impacting that 100-year high water level by a little over a foot. And that's in creating over 1,000 acre feet of storage. So getting the two priorities and the two goals to match is extremely challenging out here, in that
So,
when you're looking at projects that are feasible to can complete, and at the same time trying to reach both goals with the same project is where the disconnect is that the flooding is, they can't really be managed as combined projects. They're pretty separate.
but Brian, this was part of our request. So
Yep.
what you've concluded, and if that's the reason it's not here, but that's not what we asked for. We were looking for the analysis to do the identification and do the out-of-box thinking to look at the things like whether there's code stuff, it's where are those potential opportunities. There were a few that were even identified on the tour that we were on, and yet none of that stuff is in here. Whether
Okay.
we end up finding through that analysis that the likelihood of doing those, that's an entirely different thing, and that's up to us as a board and the policy and the decisions we make. But to suggest that you guys, to me, it feels like you've made decisions and decided that it's not worth it to do that for us, and I find that unacceptable. I'm just
Okay,
gonna, I gotta be frank.
All right, Mike, I
Not
guess
different
more,
Frank.
it's not that so much that we decided to ignore those. It's more that when we did any modeling efforts on these, they didn't have any impact. There was no positive benefit, there was no impact. And so that's part of why they weren't really carried forward. And we can expand on those.
But Brian, that should be in here. If you're
Yep.
literally, I want to know what you've done. If you're then suggesting there is nothing, I want to see, I'll make sure, others are concurring with this. But the expectation was you were going to go through this, look for those things. I mean, the only reason I can support you if that's the case is by being able to see that you have properly evaluated a bunch of different opportunities and thought outside the box.
Okay.
What if we could get funding for some major project in that one area that was like a potential wetland thing? We knew there'd be some maybe political or policy questions, but there could be people that could fund this. So please don't prejudge this. That's not what we asked you to do. It's to do the ID. So anyway, I don't
Okay.
probably need to vet that. I'd be curious if my colleagues support that view. But that was the thing that really struck me in reading
All right.
this.
And that makes sense. It makes sense. I guess I kind of more moved toward discounting them because they were not providing any positive benefit, but we can still provide descriptions of that and some of our results.
Anybody else on that topic, Frank?
Yeah, you're talking about basically adding a goal number 4 that says, inquire about the possibility of what's it called? Up watershed storage. It doesn't say that it has to be eliminated. I mean, that's the idea, or to reduce it significantly. Isn't that really what you're talking about? And then
Yeah.
isn't that what we approved a little earlier with the Sutton Lake? Isn't that part of the storage issue?
Yes. And actually, I believe it doesn't require a number 4 because it's in number 1. I mean, our 2, as we discuss this, there were 2 aspects of what we were looking for this to do. And they talk about, it's mentioned here as runoff volume in this report, but that's it. That's what we're after, is the storage.
Well,
All
then
right.
wouldn't we talk about flooding then instead of runoff volume?
Sure.
Or wordsmithing?
Yeah, I wasn't too worried about it here, but I mean, Bruce, thoughts, comments? Is this also a disconnect for you?
Yeah, if you look at the paragraph above the 3 bullet points there, it talks about reduced flooding.
Yeah.
And we had some suggestions from Wink about maybe that super big wetland complex by Buck Lake. And we also talked about maybe reducing, I mean, I guess we wanted to know the good, the bad, if it's bad or not, if we need 1,000 acre feet to reduce a foot. And to get that in the upper watershed, we'd have to pond or dig out or, create a lake or whatever it is. That's what we wanted to know. We wanted to know, is this feasible or not? But that's our decision to decide that, not yours.
Sure.
And it should have been spelled out. It should have been spelled out that other opportunity, maybe there's buying a few homes on the lake. There's a really low that gets us a little more storage or flood protection, or increasing the flow of the outlet channel. Maybe that, what does that mean? Is that a half a foot, 2/10? Those are the kind of things we wanted to see.
Yep. And the outlet channel is pretty much the main flood control method that's prescribed in the report.
Well, right, but you were supposed to look at the upper watershed. We knew this was a potential item, but anyway, I think you got it. You've supported that is missing. Kurt, did you have anything? Because you've been here since day one too. Any thoughts?
This was to get full value, and part of the full value is addressing the storage, Mike, just like you said. Okay. I think that's absolutely the case, and this is a big picture item. I realize it's not going to be just snapping your fingers, but we got to cover all our bases, including the storage.
Okay. Thanks. Anybody else? I mean, I had one other thought that actually almost related to this. One of the things that I was sort of struck by, Brian, because again, I'm not sure if we need your presentation. I like the idea of digging into some questions.
Sure, and I don't mind that at all either.
But I was also, it's sort of just the way you sort of commented on the potential storage then flood protection, that there isn't a silver bullet. And I'm seeing that also as my takeaway in looking at the items, even for the phosphorus reduction aspect.
Okay.
Even those totals that were coming up, it's like, man, it's almost like you can't find enough to actually achieve our TMDL goal. I mean, that was almost, and maybe that's the reality of it, but I looked at and was thinking of those percentages, you're adding them up. The most you get with the 11 projects that you've ID'd, we're getting 83% of the total reduction necessary. Yep. So it's like, holy crap, okay, this is, maybe the goal isn't realistic. Maybe we're missing something, it's that kind of stuff. But that's what I was also, the other item that I share with my colleagues, or that I'm struck by that. And again, maybe it's the reality, Brian, but I mean, at least I really like to do that kind of work. And I see some of that stuff. That's the kind of stuff I think we were looking for. So it's good to see that in there.
Okay.
Anybody else? Thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I have a question about the area south of Buck Lake. That seemed to be the area that had the most potential for storing water. Should that be on top of the list as a possibility of either storing water or slowing it down? As we talk a lot about storage, but is slowing the water down an idea?
And that's on the Buck Lake storage, that upstream area. We did include that in the report, and even creating 150 acre feet or so of storage on that, it had zero impact on the downstream water levels. And so it really didn't have any positive effect on the overall outcome of the models by adding all that storage upstream of Buck Lake.
So we're kind of back to the flood study, where we're looking at a pretty big area. None of the farmers want to store water. It's a daunting challenge to find solutions to storage and our TMDL. But I guess, more analysis is needed at this point.
As far as, I think Meg and I discussed this a little bit today too. And I think to really look at having a significant positive impact on the flooding, especially when we look at the flooding, you're looking at either, like I said, the Prior Lake Outlet Channel does have some strong possibilities, but there are some definitely challenges in trying to negotiate and change that outlet agreement. Or in kind of regurgitating what was done in the 2016 report and saying we're gonna put as much water as we can in all these areas in the upper watershed in order to to get to that point where we want to be to reduce our high waters and our flood levels on the downstream lakes.
Oops, sorry about that. Oh. Anyone else? Frank, Bruce, Maggie, Carl? Bruce?
Well, I guess kind of haven't been familiar with I am not totally familiar with the 2016 study, but a couple of things. I've always felt that this flooding issue is a three-pronged approach. You might have to get more water out of the outlet channel. You might have to buy some houses around the lake, and you might have to find some storage upstream. But you're not going to get the storage needed upstream to address the problem. And the other thing I would say is, last year we had a record number of inches of precipitation, and did we even have one flood? So the scenario is, we had an incredible flooding scenario, which is incredible rains for a short period of time. That is the flood scenario. Now, everybody needs to understand this. You can put more wetlands or more ponds, but those things fill up. And then when rain hits, they're 100% impervious. So the volume of water keeps coming. You're not gonna, I mean, you're no longer have any storage. They're full. So they all keep coming. And so the only way you could really reduce it is get more water out faster. That to me has always been the solution, because, and I had to deal with it in Shakopee. All our wetlands and everything was full. And then they're all become parking lots. They're 100% impervious. So to get this, I mean, maybe we have to build an incredible big pond somewhere, or we can divert water somewhere else. But
well, that's the purpose of this, Bruce.
Yeah. So
we
really,
embarked on this. You know, deal with just that.
Yeah,
and look at this. We're supposed to evaluate, or WENC was going to evaluate that.
Right.
Find out where those opportunities are.
You got to look at the flood scenario of 2014. That's the flood scenario. And how do you deal with it?
Well, I think we need to give a little bit of kudos to WENC, though, on thinking of this new idea for the outlet modification. It's not just putting in another pipe. It's like how they're addressing releasing that water flow. And I don't know if, Brian, you want to talk about it a little bit more, but it was a 2.6-foot reduction in flooding. And just as frame of reference, I think the Sutton Lake project has what, Carl? 0.01 reduction in flooding realized, or something really extremely low. So the idea that they've come up with is incredible. Like it's going to make a huge impact. And I think that's probably a little bit why WENC had stopped a little bit when they were looking at these wetlands restorations and how little effect it had in comparison to that. I mean, this really is our silver bullet. And I think I don't know, I think it's interesting. It's a great idea, and it'll do the job.
So the only thing I would point out, though, Maggie, is still that what we asked for, there's still that storage opportunity. Any storage also is improving water quality, right? Because you're holding and probably filtering that water out. So there was supposed to be, as I understand it, bang for the buck on a couple of things by finding storage opportunities up there. So it's again, but we're supposed to get this list of the items. I'm not discounting the potential opportunity to upgrade, or whatever you want to call it, the P-lock, you know, the outlet panel, but still we had these other things, because that will come with it. The capacity be handled downstream? So that's why we wanted this list of items. That's what we asked for. So.
And I think Brian had that that flood reduction consideration in these project lists. But so that was one of the things that I had emailed to you too. I think clear marching orders for WENC would be good. Like if you're looking for more larger flood potential reduction projects that they can tell you why it was discounted. I think something that's clear moving forward, so that they can make sure that they're meeting all the marks that you need to feel good about this report, the better.
So, Brian, what clarity do you want? Because I thought I thought we were clear up front what we were looking for. It's in essence what you've done on the phosphorus side of things.
Okay, yep,
So
yep.
I'm not sure, Maggie, they need other additional direction. I'd like to ask Brian, do you feel you need a direction on what it is that we had originally wanted to accomplish with you on the storage and the flood protection stuff?
Well, we do have a couple other scenarios that we did look at. We didn't put those together in detail, but we can include at least the summary of those and what we looked at and what we modeled and kind of what some of the results were, to at least get those included in it, so we can come up with kind of a more firm conclusion in the report that, you know, these smaller single location storage sites in the upper watershed have minimal impacts, rather than, you know, only having a couple of different alternatives for flood mitigation, including the Prior Lake outlet. And like I said, there's a minor improvement with the storage upstream of Buck Lake. And to include kind of more of that, like we had some thoughts looking at, you know, holding back a little higher water level on Sutton, Swamp, and Buck all at the same time, and more timed releases, and not really seeing positive benefits from that. But again, we can provide more detail on those scenarios that we looked at.
Mike,
Frank?
I have a question.
Go, Bruce.
When was this study supposed to be to us at this stage? Are you guys about a month behind schedule?
Yes, we are.
And because of that delay, we lost Todd Hubner, who was one of the key components of this study, going to Bolton and Mink. Is that correct?
Yes.
I mean, you put us in a bind by your delay and losing a key component of the study to finish the study, because he can't be there anymore because he left. What are you going to do about that?
And we do have, I have plenty of support at Wenk. With the rest of the project team has been working on this, and support from other managers who are involved in getting and helping me out to get this thing pushed through.
Brian, I have a quick question. Have there been employees from Stantec now assigned to you to help you finish this thing off? Where is that at?
We don't anticipate that we'll be having any Stantec people helping out. Like I said, I have Lou, who's helped out with a lot of the work on this, with a lot of the modeling and a lot of the data and all that management, and Ross, who's done the PC swim modeling. And I'll be getting input from Diane and Ed, who are higher level, more senior staff here. And so we have enough people to be able to make sure we end up with a good product here.
Okay. Anybody else?
If I could, this is Carl, I would just offer maybe one suggestion. You know, putting the results in terms of trying to mitigate the 2014 flood. I mean, that's obviously a huge volume. But if you go back to the 2016 flood study, the goal that the policymakers made or set was this kind of first tier, which was, I think that they made the decision that, you know, trying to get to mitigating that full 2014 flood was maybe not necessarily realistic in any near time frame, and they set a first tier protection level of reducing the level of Prior Lake to 905.5 for the 25-year return period. So that, you know, I think just a suggestion, it might be worthwhile just to assess the projects that are on the docket or on the slate for potentially in this report, based on the actual goal set by the policymakers in that flood study.
Sure.
And that might actually make, you know, again, it's articulating benefit at a scale that's more manageable. And you might find that Buck channel the East Channel restoration or whatever it was called might have a more significant impact towards that goal.
Sure.
Just a thought.
So you said that was the 25-year, Carl?
Yeah, if I could remember the page number from the report, but there's a table that lists the first tier protection level to reduce the flood level of Prior Lake to 905.5 for the 25-year return period.
Okay, anything else? I'm gonna look to keep us moving along. We still have some other items. Anybody have anything else for Brian? Or Brian, did you have any questions or something that you were looking to get from staff, Carl, or the board?
No, it sounds like the main order of business is to beef up on the volume in the flood control.
Yes.
So Mike and Brian, when can we expect your final report? And will there be dollar numbers attached to some of these items that you're putting out there?
Yes, there will be dollar numbers attached to them.
Again, rough estimates, Kurt, they're not doing the full engineering analysis, right, Brian?
No,
I
I
mean,
know, I know, roughly, yeah, I know.
Very,
Okay.
very rough preliminary estimate.
Yeah, but an idea for us to, yeah, perfect. Thanks for clarifying, Kurt.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, everybody. We'll move on to the next item, the DA hiring update. Bruce, sir, the floor is yours.
Well, let's see here. Gotta find my notes here. Frank and I and Catherine met today from 12:30 to about 4:45. And then we met a half hour after that. We interviewed 8 candidates. And Frank, jump in here at any time you feel like it. And we started out with 21. 4 did not qualify. We took 17 candidates. We said we'll interview the top 8. And we did that today. We look at what we came up with is, looks like we have 5 candidates that we feel should move forward out of the 8. And basically we're set up, the panels are being set up for January 12th with a stakeholders panel that'll be run by Frank. And I was going to do the technical panel. And we would have those 5 candidates interview that afternoon, going from one panel to the next panel and back and forth. So that's kind of the gist. Frank, I think I might have missed something, but.
Sure. So we're at kind of a crossroads here. We think that we've done the first part of what you've asked us to do, and that is to get us down to, I don't want to use the word finalist yet because there is a term of art there. They're a finalist the minute you guys, the entire board, looks at them. And there's some implications of that. Their names are public. Now, none of these people have given us authority to share their name with anybody. And that's what would happen if we gave you all 5 of these. And yet, on the other hand, we do not want to be in a position where we're holding this close to us because it's a 5-person decision. So what we have got set, well, we're in the process of setting this up for Monday with Joan, is we know the panels, but we know also that the board wants to get engaged in this. How can we do this in an orderly fashion so that the names can come out? There's still 5 people, and we listened to your perspectives. Does the person have to have district administration experience? Yes or no? Well, yeah, it seems like it makes a lot of sense because that's far more comparable than being a city manager, county manager, you name it. So we've got a candidate or 2 like that. We've also got a candidate or 2 that really has been engaged in consulting primarily. And I think that's kind of down the line of what Chair Miser was talking about. So you're going to have kind of a cross section of a variety of candidates are available, and some of their strengths are different than one another. We wanted, in any case, to meet with Joan on Monday to step through what exactly we should be doing to share this information with you and in what time frame, so that on one hand, we don't have surprise candidates who drop out or are angered because somehow we did something without telling them. And of course, to get the information to you as quickly as we possibly can. I think you've got every one of the applications and those associated materials. And maybe it's as simply as doing this. We put a number on every one of those and then send you those numbers. Here's the 5 numbers that we see right now, and you'd be able to look at your materials. That is, I've seen Baker Tilly did it. They did it with me last night because I was out in Maple Plain. They're looking for a city administrator. So these things for me are running down a parallel course. So it might be as easy as that to get that information to you. I just don't want to misstep here.
So are you looking for direction then, Frank and Bruce? Is that what I'm maybe hearing, Frank? What are you, was there an ask there?
I didn't think so. What I really
No.
wanted to do is say, this is where we are right now.
Yep.
Monday, we want to get clarification on how do we legally and artfully get these 5 people to you without breaking any data practices or privacy laws.
Yep.
And then one of the things we would like from you, we've asked the panelists. We got great results for the technical panel and for the stakeholder panels. I think we only had one person who couldn't do it. We were able to put another person in that position. But we've asked for questions. We do not want those panels to think they are deciding on the district administrator. That's the manager's job. But obviously, we want them to feel that they've got input and the staff has input. And so if you've got any ideas for questions Bruce and I are both going to make up some questions, but if you have some additional ideas, we certainly would love to hear them.
Well, for me, you two have been down this road in your previous adventures, so I'm not too worried. I'm happy to review it if you're looking for feedback on them, but I trust the 2 of you guys to lead this effort on our behalf. And again, I would assume that what we would get back from you is after the panels interview those 5, you have a sort of a strong recommended, we should look at these X number. I don't think we need to see all 5. I have reviewed them. I actually pulled 5 that actually look like they might be interesting for one reason or another. I don't know if there's any overlap, but there's a few to me that just clearly stand out, that these are probably the types of candidates that we would seriously consider.
There is another thing we could do if someone feels strongly that, hey, I've been somehow locked out, or I just need to get into this. And Bruce and I could meet individually with other members of the board and go over this information. It's not a public meeting, it's not an open meeting, but there'd have to be a gospel understanding that those names don't go anywhere.
Agreed. So I would be interested to see what who the 5 are, to see if they match any of the ones that I pulled. And again, I'll just be curious. I don't need anything more than that, or to get your thoughts, comments after the panels are done. And I'm happy to review questions if you're interested or think that there's more value. You're going to have a lot of people feeding into this, so I don't feel any need to do that, because I think you've got a lot of talent already doing that. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you.
Mike?
Yes.
The only question I have is if Steve or Kurt, if you wanted to be more involved. I think, Maggie, you correct me now, we looked at the open meeting law, but Frank's he's gonna do one panel and I'm doing the other. So we're really not in the same meeting. So we each could add another board member could be in there if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Yep. We couldn't have 3, but we could have one more besides us. Or Mike sounds like he's okay just hanging out there. So
Did
anybody
somebody
wants-
express, Steve or Kurt, did one of you express interest or have a desire for more involvement in this process?
Well, Mike, well, first of all, there's two panels, the technical panel and the stakeholder panel. Which
Right.
one is Frank going to be leading and which one is Bruce going to be leading?
I'm going to take the technical. No, kidding. No, stakeholder.
Stakeholder. Okay.
I've got stakeholder. Bruce, because of his technical background, would take technical. I
Okay,
mean,
well,
we can switch them.
Yeah.
I don't bring much to the table then.
And then who is on these panels? I don't even know that the people are on these panels. Who's on the technical panel? Who's on the stakeholder panel?
We didn't bring those lists with, but I know stakeholders, it generally was, we asked city administrators.
That was mailed out. Sorry, Frank, sorry to pause you there, but that was sent to us in the package.
Right.
Kurt, you have that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
All right.
Chair.
Maybe not the names for this panel of stakeholders, but at least the technical panel is starting to have names to it.
Okay. Well,
Steve?
I'd be willing to volunteer for the technical panel, Mike.
You mean volunteer, or you would like to?
Volunteer. Yeah.
Meaning, okay, so you would like to listen in on the technical panel, is that?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
There you go. Sure, sounds like, and they're willing to have you, so consider it done. Steve, you have any needs or interest or any questions on this process at this stage?
Yeah, I have great faith in Bruce and Frank in this process. I'm dealing with some real challenges in my day job in downtown Minneapolis, so time's kind of limited. But maybe when you get down to the final two, maybe you could bring the managers in a little bit for that.
Oh, definitely.
We will. That's already part of the process, Steve. So, okay, thank you. I'm going to keep moving us along. So the next item is the retreat. And just briefly, I just wanted to remind folks that our retreat then is Saturday, January 9th from 9 to noon is what we were looking at. Bruce was going to try and secure the city hall. I don't know if that option still exists. Bruce, do you have any update by chance of that, or Maggie, do you know?
No, I haven't. I don't know. I don't know if we can get in there or not, but I can check, I guess.
That'd be great if you could.
I have an idea on that. Devani's has a back room right by Sterling Bank.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they can rent it out with the governor's rules, but.
So there's options.
Yeah,
others have those kinds of things. Anyway, can we let Bruce lead that effort to see if he can secure or find options for us? City Hall is not open. And then, so I wanted to clarify, and I think we shared this then in an email, Maggie did. So in the past, or in retreat number 2, we had made a decision. We invited Diane to come join us after we've had the chance to meet ourselves. We had weather, so it didn't happen last year, but so I've invited Maggie to come join us in the last hour to participate with us, and we can go a little later, obviously, if necessary. But, I wanted to share that. I don't know, anybody have any questions, issues, concerns?
No, that would be fine, Mike. That's a very good idea.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I think that's a great idea. Is there any reason why it's not the entire thing? I mean, are we gonna cover that sensitive pieces of information that?
So I'm not sure if it's sensitive, Frank, but the desire to be able to have our own time.
Right.
I think it's important. It was things like, even in now that it's complete, but one of the items that it was a couple of years ago, or maybe even year 1 of the retreat, the fact that we didn't have, and not that this is a confidential item, but the ability to then freely talk about what do we do when she retires? Do we have a process in place on what we're going to do going forward? And I think just allowing the managers a little freedom to talk is what I'm after. But no, and that's then, so I still like the idea. I know the managers in the past all very much liked this, who participated in it and didn't want to lose the opportunity to continue have that alone time, because this is the only time we ever have just managers to talk about issues, goals,
Oh,
vision.
It's the sort of thing.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right, Mike. That's what I always wanted for the retreats, and it gives the managers an open forum, an open floor to put anything out there.
Frank?
Might we at least be able to provide some sort of summary? I'm not suggesting in writing, just generally topically to staff.
Actually, we do, Frank. So here's what we, sorry, and I did list this. So what we've done in the past, and I was going to ask Maggie if she had a file from Diane for the first 2 years. So what we've done, Frank, is I then, after retreat 1, I took responsibility to pull the notes together of the meeting, the salient stuff, and then got that back out to the board for review and comment to see if I had captured the essence of kind of goals, priorities, objectives, items that we talked about. And then we in turn then shared that with Diane. Actually, I sat down with Diane to review that. Diane ended up taking that and turning that into some task items. And she did a second iteration, and I think even a better job in year 2 of turning that literally into some, where it was appropriate, task items for her to complete. And so we do have that. I think, Maggie, I don't know if you have a chance to look in files that Diane had around, if she has those 2 year 1, year 2 retreat notes to share with our the board, so they can get a sense for what we've done and how we've done follow-up on this. So
Sure.
Yeah, Frank, does that feel better then?
Yeah, I'm just trying to reduce, I mean, this sort of thing does cause some unrest as a staff member, especially when we know they've got to be alone. Oh, really? Why is that? It's human nature.
So nothing evil going on, and that's why we did the notes and shared them and walked through with Diane. Yes, it can always be conceived if it's not shared or talked about.
I know.
But as soon as Diane ended up, or I don't remember if it was Diane said, hey, how about if I come for part of this? And I went, great idea, done. The rest of the board also supported it. So no, we're just trying to, we don't have, in any of our regular course of business, Frank, there was never an opportunity to pull away from all of the monthly crap that we need to deal with and go, are we on, what are our goals? What are our vision? What are our direction? Are we missing stuff? Are we not missing stuff? That's the kind of stuff we want to deal with here, not stuff that is done at a regular meeting, because that we have those for. This is to do the stuff that we don't have time to do. Maggie might share stuff about where staff is at, on items. Again, is the board missing something from a goal or priority that staff says, hey guys, you're off on this? And I would hope, she'd feel comfortable, I think Maggie is, to alert us to something if we're missing something or not doing something that's, or we're doing something that's harmful to staff. So that kind of stuff. The opportunity to chat about that. And this will be just year 3. We can adjust this as you and Steve are going to be new to this adventure and Maggie's new. And if we get enhancements to how we do this in year 4, great.
Have you asked, or would there be any reason to ask the staff if they have something that they want us to talk about? Hey, would you talk about whatever?
I think that's what Maggie, I'm thinking that's what Maggie brings to us. Right, Maggie? Is that also, is that what you'd be thinking?
Right. Yeah, Mike and I have been talking about that. I've had staff develop a work plan, which we've never done before. And so we're trying to make an estimate of how much hours each task is going to take, and then the additional workload that we're having this year and how we're going to accomplish that and what we're going to have to let go of in order to fill that. So that'll be like our big topic of discussion as staff, is just
prioritization.
2021 so.
We've been doing a lot. That sounds great.
Hey, Mike?
Yeah, Bruce?
Yeah, one of the reasons I was so kicked off at Wink and their delay was that we wanted to have this study and the numbers.
I know.
So we have some discussion at the board retreat. Now we won't have. So.
Nope.
I'll apologize to Brian later, but doggone it anyway. They really screwed up on this.
They did.
Big time.
Well, it's not just that Todd leaving, and actually, so actually, we're gonna move topics because I realized we didn't chat about this. When Maggie first shared this, I asked her to share that with the rest of the board so we could talk about what this means to us. And so, is there anything further on the board retreat, or let's chat about the Wink item?
Usually you want us to send you items?
Yes, and you have done that already, Bruce, and I've gotten a couple from Kurt.
Okay.
So for everybody, I'm bringing everybody's list together. Anything that comes from a board member gets put on the list. I might do some prioritization, mostly around, especially if there's multiple board members asking for something, it's going to get bumped up and higher on the list. But anything and everything that somebody puts on will be on this list and get shared with the rest of the board members. But again, the goal is to probably look at things like vision, direction, planning, higher level type stuff rather than something very specific to, anyway, seine nets or, I don't know, selling the seine net.
So like, whose lane is who?
Yes.
That might be something we could talk about.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
All right, so let's chat then about the loss of Todd. And I think, Bruce, you characterized it. I certainly expected him to be here. He's a key reason that we went with these guys, and now he's gone. Caller 3 left.
I don't know if this is a good suggestion.
Yeah.
What if we tell Wink, get a subcontract with Bolton and Mink to have Todd help you finish the report?
There you go.
I don't know if we
There
can
you
do
go.
it, but you know what? They put us in a bind, and the main reason we hired him was because of Todd, and now they can sub out to him. I bet you they will fight that, saying, well, we got all these other people. These other people haven't been involved. Everybody's coming in.
Right.
I agree. I like it, Bruce. Sorry, go ahead, Frank.
Does that come out of Wink's side?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does the board?
No, that's a very good idea, Bruce. We should push that hard because Todd has value, and losing him is a major downgrade in what our product is going to be.
Right.
Will we regret this somewhere down the road? Will they do the little retribution dance that we do as human beings?
What do you mean, Frank? Tell me what you mean by that, if you would.
I don't know how it would be represented, but do they have information that we're totally dependent on that they keep because somehow it's theirs, and we might ask for it back someday, and geez, we just can't find it, or it's going to cost you a little money to get it back. Retaliation for.
Carl, you can't do that.
Contract. I'm going to ask Maggie. Maggie, do you recall? Isn't this, or maybe Carl even? Isn't this part of the contract that we own? This is work for hire stuff, correct? We own the data.
It is. I wrote this contract, so yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
But to Frank's effect, though, like if they came back and said, "Gosh, we can't find it," or it's terrible practice, but and I don't think that honestly, like Wink or Stantec with their reputation would do that. But Carl, I would love to hear your comments on that.
I wouldn't expect any reputable firm to do something like that.
I didn't think so, and perhaps I shouldn't have even mentioned it.
Well, I like Bruce's idea too, because I like Bruce's idea. I'll leave it at that. Is anybody else in favor of trying to pursue that? Ask Maggie to see if she can make that happen for us, because I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
All we can do is say no.
And Maggie can do it with her various responsibilities. I mean, it's not one of those things she's got to drop.
There will be something else that won't get done, correct? Steve?
Yeah, it's all right. I can ask. I mean, like Bruce said, all they can do is say no, and can't hurt to ask. So I can do that.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mike? The other option is we tell them how dissatisfied we are, and we should be looking for a deduction of their services.
So don't you think Brian heard that message loud and clear?
Oh, that was pretty loud. I got that.
I think so. So if
I
they say
think
no,
so. I
somebody
think he
would
did.
say, well, I mean,
How much, by the way, Maggie, how much have we paid into Wink so far on this $75,000 contract?
We paid, I think, about 60,000. We haven't finished it off. I know they've spent more hours than they estimated because I've been forcing them to give us all the deliverables. Yeah, I'm sure they're taking a little bit of a hit on this one already. Yeah.
Mike, I suggest that we don't run through the last $15,000 check until we get some satisfaction for some of your questions, some of your requests.
I hope it's our questions, Kurt. So I appreciate it. I think that's appropriate to hold off, but I hope it's our questions, and that I'm not alone in thinking this is a major gap.
No, right.
Carl, you're kind of right in the middle of all this. What do you think? Are we overreacting? I'm the new guy on the block, so I don't know squat.
Yep.
I'm sorry, was that question to me?
Yes, it was, Carl. Are we overreacting? Are we treating these guys? I mean, your implication is what I said. No reputable company would do that. Gotcha. Yeah, probably not the smartest thing I've ever said. I'm just kind of looking at your countenance, and I get the impression that maybe you're thinking a little different than we are. If you don't mind, I appreciate that you don't want any kind of.
I think they're, I can't speak to, I don't think the delay in their product is wholly their fault, because there was at the outset also a slow up on our end because the city of Prior Lake said, no, well, what do you mean we're paying for upgrades to the swim model? So there was about a month's delay at the front end of the project where we had a tough time delivering on inputs for WANK because the city of Prior Lake delayed their approval of authorization, and Diane said, well, hold up, don't do that swim work yet until we get the finances approved from the city. So, I mean, that's not necessarily the entirety of it, but I think there's some reasons beyond WANK's control for why they weren't delivering on time. The whole issue with Todd leaving, I mean, I think that's Todd's decision, and I'm sure, just speaking candidly here, I'm sure WANK tried everything that they could to keep Todd. So,
sure.
It's in the end, it's a bad deal for you guys as an entity, certainly to have probably the top of the project manager of the project lead, but I don't know that you can put the full blame on WANK as an entity for Todd's decision to leave.
Thanks for being straight with us.
Anybody else?
When was the swim model thing? When was the swim model thing discussed? You know what time frame?
I wasn't there.
Hey, Bruce, let me, the only thing I think about from a timing, if we need more time or we want to get together to carve out time for the board to look at and talk about the blueprint, we can do that. I mean, I wasn't picking on them for the time frame. I would just like to get a good work product. I mean, we've paid a lot of money, and we will find time. I promise you, I will make sure that we find time for us to actually turn this into what we think of as some goals and objectives for, the watershed in the district. What we're going to do with this. We'll go find time. All right. Here's my bottom line. If we get a good product, then I don't care what we pay. The month isn't product. If it's sorry, go ahead. I mean, it's late, but if we get a good product, I guess we can see what they come up with. My only suggestion is that maybe they should inquire about having Todd help finish the product since he was involved in it so much. But that's my only point. Bruce, Todd, here's a thought. you've had a long-term relationship with Todd and done a lot of work with him over the years. And I'm sure part of what Todd was interested in is securing work for whatever firm he was working for at the time. Todd may feel some obligation to completing this project, and he may be open or interested in trying to find a path in order to help do that. I don't know what it means for the relationship with Wank. Todd might be open to participate.
He told me if once the report's done, if there's some things he would like to add in there, he would review it and make his comments for free.
Oh, so that's something. Would he look at it now and concur if we, well, anyway.
There's nothing to look at right now.
Yeah. Okay.
But he said he would do that for me, that he would look it over, because he's seeing some things that they're not incorporating as part of that study as of right now. So it's a mess. It's a mess.
Okay, that'll be good to hear. All right, so let's move on to the last item, then the bank. The update. Bruce?
Yeah, I signed a check for $100,000 and it's going into my account so I can help pay for that Sutton Lake project that's gonna go to hell.
Well, I signed it too, Bruce, so I get half of it.
Okay. Ed and I are going to go on a long vacation. No, we signed a check to go to Sterling. I don't know, it wasn't really approved by that, but we did approve switching banks. So the update is we got $100,000 going in there so we can start the check ordering process. We don't have checks yet for Sterling. We got to keep, and Maggie did a real nice email. I don't know if you just sent that to me, Maggie.
Yeah.
Maybe you should send it to the rest of the board. She laid out everything really nicely, what we need to do for transitioning from Old National to Sterling. So it's being taken care of, but we had a check for 100,000 just to get some money in there.
Cool. All right,
Mike, I have a question, Mike, real quick. Now, as far as signing the checks, it's still you, me, and Bruce for now until the new account is set up in Sterling, and then we're going to add Frank and Steve. Is that the plan?
Bruce, can you comment on that, or Maggie?
I have no idea who's going to sign. I assume Kurt's right.
I thought that's why we were doing these. We had those cards come the other meeting, so I thought we completed that task.
That's correct. Yeah.
So it's effective right now. Okay, it's effective right now.
Well, effective when we get the new checks.
Well, that's what I meant. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair.
So moved.
Yeah, Steve, sorry.
No second. Don't give him a second yet.
Wait. Yeah, I know.
So we just saved an enormous amount of money on a very important project, Sutton. Why aren't we doing phase 2? Why aren't we saying, hey, we got an opportunity here to move forward faster than we anticipated we could? And I appreciate I'm out of order here and you can just rule me as such. But shouldn't we at least consider that? Or maybe that's well underway and just Mr. Doofus here doesn't know.
You've been out of order for about 2 decades.
27,
right?
who's counting?
I mean, don't try and claim it. So no, great order treatment. But Maggie, I'm going to see you do a clarification, but let me try, because I believe, as I understand it, Frank, we need additional approvals or something in order to do phase 2. And we did talk about this, and we wanted to get phase 1 completed and moving before we do the ask for phase 2. Do I have the essence of that correct, Maggie? Carl?
Well, phase 2 can't really happen until we get the habitat management plan and baseline assessment done, and then we can work on opening public hearings to get that DNR approval. And Carl, can you talk more about that? I know it's like a $20,000 estimate, but I don't know what it all entails.
Yeah, so-called phase 2 of Sutton Lake is at least for the board members that were on board last summer. Really, we had to pull back. So it's not about construction. What's being built allows the ability for drawdown and active management of the lake through the control structures that are part of the construction plan and are approved to be built. What the district doesn't have is DNR approval to use all those structures and draw down the lake during periods of time to create additional storage. So the board went through an exercise of considering the construction cost for the benefit with making a very conservative assumption that DNR would never approve active management. There was still 0.12 feet of benefit on Prior Lake, but with active management, we were estimating you could get almost 0.3 of a foot of benefit in flood reduction on Prior Lake. And so really what we're talking about having to go through moving forward is DNR approval of a lake management plan, which the board authorized data collection through surveys of wildlife and aquatic vegetation and assessment of that data, which we've been working on. We haven't completed a report or our memo of our findings yet, but that information would have to support the conclusion by DNR that the benefits of drawdown the lake would actually have habitat improvement. The balance would be in favor of habitat, and they would not allow that drawdown solely for the purposes of flood reduction. So we need to assess that data. DNR, if the findings were positive, would have to agree, and we'd have to put that into a lake management plan. And then they also said for drawdown of a lake below its ordinary high water elevation, established ordinary high water elevation, you have to go through another public hearing proceeding where all landowners to weigh in on that process. So those are the prime. So in short, lake management plan drafting, review and hopefully approval by DNR. Without that, there's no point in proceeding with the public hearing process. But overall, we had in the district's water resource management plan that a very rough estimate of 20,000 to proceed with those three things: the management plan, getting approval from DNR, and going through the public process at 20,000. And that was scheduled for 2022, but I guess it's up to you guys if you want to consider advancing that in 2021.
Bruce, on this topic or a new topic? Because I also have Steve.
On this topic, haven't we had a drawdown this fall with the dry weather? Would we be able to see what it looks like? I'm just asking because I'm thinking there's a good example of a drawdown, nature drawdown. Maybe we should study that. I don't know.
Hey, Bruce, why don't you call your friends at the state and tell them that that's the way they should operate?
I suppose the other problem too is that these activities would involve the staff that's already stretched. So, it's kind of like one thing bangs into the other. Never mind. It sure would be.
Steve, you look like you were starting to ask a question. I'm going to give you the floor.
Me?
Steve.
Steve. He's asking. Can't
Steve,
hear you,
we
Steve.
can't hear you. I think you're on mute, Steve.
You're on mute.
Oh.
Not yet, Steve.
There you go. There it is.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Our retreat is at 8:00 a.m. on the 9th.
9 a.m.
9 a.m. Thank you.
Great. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
One last thing, Maggie, can you stay on the meeting? I want to see if I can get my computer sound to work. So
Sure.
Please stay on just 1 minute.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Somebody, motion to adjourn, or we're caught here all night long. You can't leave.
But Steve
So
made,
moved.
who said that? Steve?
Somebody make a motion? Bruce?
So moved.
I already did.
Okay,
Steve-
second.
I think Steve wants to say something.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Roll call vote, of course. Steve, how do you vote?
Except for Maggie, aye.
Bruce, how do you vote?
Aye.
Frank, how do you vote?
I'm going to abstain.
There you go. Kurt, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mike votes aye. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Stay
Happy
safe.
New Year, everyone.
Bye.